Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Yu Wing. You can call me You Win, like I win, you win, we all win, or win. And I'm just so happy to be here with you. This is so exciting. I have been challenging myself to post every day for 90 days. I don't exactly know what day it is today yet. I know I'm carrying along. And I do like to start my videos with a practice that I use something on my playlist that helps me to tune in and check in. So for today, I wanted to share the practice of pausing. Just pause. Anything that you're doing right now, if you are cleaning up around the house, if you are working on something, if you are scrolling, I just want to ask you to pause and tune in. Tune in to your internal experience. Maybe you are experiencing a sensation in your lower back, or maybe you're worried about something. So just to take the moment to allow yourself to acknowledge what you're experiencing. And then, depending on your capacity, you might tend to it, or maybe you'll come back to it later. But it's really helpful. I've noticed it's been really helpful for me to allow myself to notice what's going on without there being a stressor or a reason for alarm. And that over time, as I've done this, it makes the experience more neutral as opposed to when I started doing this in therapy and I would be talking about something excitedly. And then my therapist would say, let's pause. And I was like, okay, I'll stop talking. And then she'd ask me to tune in to my experience. And so I would still be kind of flustered. But now that I have this set up as one of the possibilities for my hourly check ins throughout the day, it helps me to be able to do it as a way to maintain my energy and to take care of myself if something is present. So, just a tool for your toolbox or something to add to your playlist. Feel free to take what resonates and to leave what doesn't. And then for today, I wanted to talk about mirrors. So, one of the interesting things that has happened probably the last couple of months is that a lot of the different readings and videos that I've listened to from different tarot readers or channelers or just information about spirituality, they've talked about this idea of being someone who mirrors for others um, their true self, a higher timeline, um, essentially being someone who reflects something in another person. And that depending on where that person is, it can be uncomfortable or it can be welcomed for them as they continue along on their path. And so I find this really interesting because there is a Vietnamese tradition that I think also happens in Korean tradition and maybe some other East Asian cultures um, that happens around the first birthday of a child. And in Vietnamese, it's called thôi. And so essentially, what happens is on your first birthday, your caregivers, your family leaves out different items that represent different careers, different um, affinities, different skills. And then whatever a baby is drawn towards may say something about their destiny, about their work, about their career, about their aptitude, right? And so I have two older brothers. So my oldest brother picked up a pen. My middle brother picked up a screwdriver. And when it came time for me, drum roll please, ba-da-da-da-da-da, I picked up a mirror. And so I don't know what my parents thought as they collected the items and, what they assigned to each of the items. But growing up as I got older, my mom would say, "Oh, picked up a mirror. You're so vain." I don't know. She thought it was connected to like beauty or like as like being an esthetician or makeup or something. Um, but as I started relating to people in my teenage years and my young adult years, a lot of people asked me if I'd ever thought about being a counselor. And think I had not thought about it myself, but I heard it enough where it became one of those things. I was like, okay, it's there. And that was sort of an initiation for me in terms of how I could understand the mirror that I picked up. And so when my mom was like, "Oh, like you're vain. You look at yourself in the mirror all day." And when I think about counselors or therapists, I think about how they reflect what is being shared, what is um, being communicated, whether verbally or non verbally. And it's something that I've practiced as I've learned about active listening and, just being someone that people feel comfortable confiding in. But now at this point, I'm thinking about the mirror and I'm thinking about, what these readers have shared about reflecting something deeper, some part of someone that I'm able to connect with, right? I've had close friends with a spiritual inclination share feedback that I help people feel comfortable so that they can be themselves, or I help them to like see the potential in themselves. And so I'm sitting with and exploring this idea that as a mirror, I might not only be reflecting the words, the ideas, the sentiments, um, or, a layer deeper of like what's of importance to someone, even the question of like, what does blank mean to you? What does that event mean to you? What does that person mean to you? Even being able to go deeper than that and to connect with someone's essence if they are willing to share, right? I will say that subconsciously it's probably happening where I'll be in someone's proximity, maybe I'm meeting with someone or I'm working with someone or, standing in a coffee shop together or the grocery store. And I can generally get a sense of how open they are, right? This is something that I've had to learn over time because I used to be very um, earnest about jumping in and just asking things that people might not be comfortable being asked on a first interaction or at all. And so, this is something that I've honed and practiced and learned. But in general, most people will give off either an open, sort of welcoming vibe, or they will give off a closed vibe of like, do not enter. And so I'm curious to know if you have that sense about people, if you are able to read people, if you can tell someone's character or, someone's going to be important to you from the first moment that you meet them, or, if your intuition tells you who to approach or who to stay away from. And so if you are hearing about this for the first time and sort of scratching your head about this, um, I guess one of the examples, and this is more recent, so I will say that I've been, I was more practiced, a little bit more comfortable in my intuition and where I am in my spiritual journey. But I was with some people, um, friends of friends, and I forget how it came up. I might have been talking about like an event and oh, it was probably my reunion. I was talking about my reunion and I was like, oh, I had a really great time. And it was so like there's this point where I just felt like I felt everyone's energy. So someone was like, oh, well, can you feel my energy? I was like, oh, do I have your permission? And so in that moment, I sort of paused and I tuned in and there was sort of this like push and pull. And, I said a couple of things and then she was like, oh, okay. And then one of the other people, there's three other people in the room. So there's four total. And then me. Person right in front of me was like, oh, what about me? So I was like, oh, do you have your permission? So I guess I just like heard a word about like dreams and so like the importance of a dream that this person was working on. And then they said, oh, what about your friend? What about our mutual friend? So I was like, oh, I don't, because I know this person well. I was like, oh, I don't think they want me like in their field. But they're like, come on, just do it, just do it. And I was like, oh, well. And then I said something and they were thinking it over. And then the last person in the room, they're like, what about her? And the whole time she was not talking, she was on her phone. And when they said her name, she didn't respond. So I could tell that she was disengaged and that it didn't even make sense for me to like ask her and I just left her alone. But that's just sort of an example of like, when people are openly sharing and sort of like asking, like, oh, I'm open, like, welcome, as opposed to sort of like, oh, okay, your energy is very different from everyone else here. So you're either, very into what you're doing, or you're trying to seem like you're very into what you're doing because you don't want anything to do with this. So maybe those are completely different, but for me, they are connected because I just had the sense and the intuitive hit that I should not bother that person. hmm So, just to talk about mirrors, just to talk about reflection, just to talk about reading people's energies, I'm curious if you have had any experience, and feel free to share with me in the comments, or if you want to reach out to me privately, feel free to do so. I am hoping that wherever you are in the world, you are healthy and you have a sense of safety. I hope that you are staying clear of germs if you can. Um, and just to acknowledge if you have a lot on your plate and just the courage that it takes to show up um, day in and day out. I'm grateful that you are here today. And I hope that you know, or that you will soon believe, that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. And I look forward to connecting with you next time. And until then, please take good care. Okay. Bye bye.